He should not have said it out loud, but once the words left my mouth there was no pulling them back. So, what do you say, Sophie? I lifted my beer like an idiot and grinned across the fire. Marry me. Everyone on the dock laughed. It was supposed to be a joke, just another stupid moment between friends after too many drinks and too many years of knowing each other too well, but Sophie didn't laugh. The sound around the fire slowly faded, one voice at a time, like someone turning down the volume on the world. She just looked at me, and something in her expression made my stomach drop. Her smile didn't widen, it disappeared. The fire cracked between us. The lake moved softly against the dock. Somewhere behind me, someone coughed awkwardly. Then Sophie said the one sentence that would quietly destroy the life I thought I understood. I've been waiting for you to ask me that. No one laughed. No one moved. 6 of our closest friends sat frozen around the fire pit like statues. The orange light flickered across their faces, and suddenly it felt like every pair of eyes had turned straight toward me, waiting. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. I blinked at her. You, what? Sophie's green eyes didn't leave mine. I've been waiting, she repeated softly, for years. My chest tightened. This wasn't a punchline. This wasn't Sophie delivering one of her perfectly timed, sarcastic comebacks. Her voice was calm, quiet, honest in a way that made my pulse start hammering in my ears. Someone shifted behind me. A chair scraped against the wood. The fire popped loudly and sent a shower of sparks into the night. But I couldn't hear any of it clearly anymore. All I could see was Sophie, my best friend, the girl who had been in my life for almost 8 years, the girl who knew every embarrassing story about me, the girl who had helped me through breakups, bad jobs, and one flu so brutal I thought I might die alone in my apartment. And apparently, the girl who had been in love with me the entire time. She slowly set her drink down beside her chair, then she stood. Her fingers brushed lightly against my hand. Can we talk? She asked, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, private. My mouth felt dry. Yeah, I said. We walked to the far end of the dock. Every step felt strange, heavy somehow. Like the wooden boards under my feet had suddenly turned into something unfamiliar. Behind us, the group tried to pretend nothing had happened. Someone added wood to the fire. Someone else started talking too loudly about s'mores. But the air had changed. Everyone knew it. The lake stretched out in front of us like black glass. The moon hung low over the water, painting a silver path across the surface. Sophie leaned against the railing. Her arms folded loosely, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I waited. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. Finally, she spoke. That wasn't a joke for me. I swallowed. Yeah, I kind of figured that part. She gave a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh. I didn't plan to say it tonight. What? The wind moved softly across the lake, lifting a few strands of her hair. I told myself for years I'd never tell you. I blinked. Years. She nodded slowly. Since college. That word alone made my brain spin. College, that was when our entire friend group started. Study nights, cheap pizza, endless group chats, and terrible karaoke nights. That was when Sophie became Sophie, my constant, my person. But love, I had never seen it, never even suspected it. You remember junior year? She asked quietly. The psych class project. I frowned. The one where we stayed in the library until sunrise arguing about Freud. She smiled faintly. You were so intense about getting everything perfect. Her eyes softened. That's when it started for me. My chest tightened. I thought it was just admiration at first, or maybe a crush. She looked out across the water, but then it never went away. The dock creaked softly as the wind moved beneath it. Every year after that it got worse. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet and Sophie kept going. You dated people. She shrugged gently. That girl from the bar last year, the one who ghosted you after 2 weeks. I winced. Yeah, that disaster. I remember sitting across from you at breakfast while you vented about it. She smiled a little. I told you she didn't deserve you. Her eyes flickered toward me, but inside I was relieved. The words hit me harder than I expected. I hated feeling that way, she continued. It made me feel like a terrible friend. But every time you dated someone else, part of me hoped it wouldn't last. The honesty in her voice made my throat tighten. So why didn't you say anything? I asked quietly. She laughed once, not bitter, just tired. Because losing you would have been worse. That sentence landed between us like something heavy. You were my best friend, Luke. Her voice softened. You still are. She looked down at her hands. If I told you and it ruined things, I would have lost everything. The dock was silent except for the quiet lap of water below us. I stared at her, and suddenly my brain began replaying moments. Hundreds of them. Coffee runs, late-night drives, the time she showed up at my apartment with soup when I had the flu, the way she always saved me a seat at group dinners. The way she remembered stupid details like how I hated olives on pizza. Things I had always assumed were just Sophie being Sophie, but now they looked different. Now they looked like something else, something I had completely missed. I feel like an idiot, I said quietly. She shook her head immediately. No, you didn't do anything wrong. But I never noticed. Her smile was gentle. That's kind of the point of hiding it. A long silence settled between us. Finally, she looked at me again. I'm not asking you to feel the same way. Her voice was calm. I just couldn't pretend anymore after tonight. She hesitated. When you joked about marrying me. She laughed softly. It felt like the universe finally calling my bluff. My chest tightened again. I needed you to know the truth. Her eyes searched my face. And if that makes things weird now. She shrugged slightly. I'm sorry. The word hit harder than anything else she'd said. Sorry. Like loving me had been something she needed to apologize for. I rubbed my face slowly. This is a lot. Yeah. I didn't even know there was something to process. I know. I exhaled slowly. Sophie. Yeah. You've been carrying this alone for years. She nodded, pretty much. That realization hit me like a wave. All those nights, all those conversations, all the times she had listened to me talk about other women while she was silently loving me. My chest felt tight again. I need time, I said honestly. Of course. Her answer came immediately. No pressure. She gave a small smile. Take all the time you need. Then she added something that stayed with me long after that night. But Luke. Yeah. Just promise me one thing. What? She held my gaze. Think about it honestly. Not quickly, not politely, honestly. The fire crackled behind us. The voices of our friends drifted faintly across the dock, and for the first time since I met Sophie Reynolds, I realized our friendship might have just crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The only question now was this: had I just lost my best friend? Or had I almost missed the love of my life? The worst part wasn't what Sophie told me that night. The worst part was realizing how many chances I'd had to see it and didn't. I didn't sleep at all. Not a single minute. Couch inside the cabin felt like a bed made of rocks. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain replayed the same moment over and over. The firelight on Sophie's face. Her voice when she said she'd been waiting for years. The way she looked relieved and terrified at the same time. I stared at the ceiling until the room slowly turned gray with morning light. And somewhere around 5 in the morning, a thought hit me so hard it made my chest tight. How many times had she been standing right next to me, loving me? While I had no idea, the cabin started waking up around 7, coffee brewing in the kitchen, someone groaning about a hangover, cabinet doors opening. I sat up slowly and rubbed my face. The events of the night before didn't feel like a dream. They felt heavier than that. Permanent somehow. Sophie walked into the kitchen about 10 minutes later. Our eyes met for a split second. She smiled politely. The same smile she used when greeting strangers. Morning. Morning. That was it. No tension, no dramatic conversation. just two people pretending nothing had shifted, and somehow that felt worse. An hour later we were packing the cars, coolers slammed shut, blankets folded, everyone moving around with the strange, careful politeness people use when something awkward is hanging in the air. Sophie hugged everyone goodbye. When she got to me, she hesitated just half a second. Then she wrapped her arms around me. The hug was warm, familiar. But something in it felt different. Like there were 1,000 words trapped inside it that neither of us were ready to say. "Drive safe," she said softly. "You too." She stepped back, and that was it. She climbed into her car and drove away. I stood there watching the empty road for a long time because deep down I knew something had changed, even if we hadn't said it out loud. The drive back to Des Moines felt longer than usual. Cornfields stretched endlessly on both sides of the highway. Flat roads, gray sky, too much time to think, and my brain would not stop replaying memories, small ones, the kind I had always ignored, like the first winter after college. I had gotten the flu so bad I couldn't get out of bed. Everyone else in our group texted jokes and feel-better messages. Sophie showed up at my apartment with soup. She stayed the whole evening. We watched dumb action movies until I fell asleep. At the time I thought she was just being a good friend. Now I wondered something else. Or the time I got dumped by a girl named Ashley. It had been messy. 3 weeks of dating followed by a brutal text message breakup. I called Sophie that night. She drove across town at midnight. We sat in her car outside my apartment for 2 hours while I complained. She listened to every word. Never once made it about herself. Never once said the thing she could have said. "I like you" instead. My chest tightened thinking about it. How many times had she chosen silence just to keep me in her life? By the time I got home, my head felt like it was spinning. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. I dropped my keys on the kitchen counter and stared at my phone. There was already a text from her. "Sophie, did you make it home okay?" Of course there was. I smiled a little despite everything. "Luke, yeah, just got in." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally another message came through. "Sophie, good." That was it. No heavy conversation, no pressure, just Sophie being Sophie. The next 3 days settled into a strange routine. We still texted every morning. Memes. Work complaints, random jokes, exactly like we always had, except now every message carried something unspoken beneath it. A quiet awareness that the ground between us had shifted. Wednesday afternoon my phone buzzed while I was staring at a spreadsheet at work. Sophie calling. I hesitated. Then answered, "Hey." "Hey, Luke." Her voice sounded normal, warm, comfortable. "You busy tonight?" "Not really." I was thinking maybe we could walk at the park. Our park, the one downtown with the pond and winding trails. We had probably walked there 50 times over the years. "Sure," I said. "6." "6 works." When I got there, she was already waiting on our usual bench. 2 coffee cups in her hands, of course. She handed me one as I sat down, black with a splash of milk, exactly how I always drink it. "You still remember that?" I asked. She smirked. "Luke, I know your coffee order better than my own." We started walking slowly along the gravel path. At first the conversation stayed safe. Work complaints. Her latest photography client. My boss's obsession with pointless meetings. Normal things, but the tension was there, hovering between us. Waiting. Eventually we reached the pond. Ducks glided across the water. The sun hung low behind the trees. Sophie sat down on a bench. Then she looked at me. "So," she said gently, "have you thought about it?" There it was, the question I had been avoiding since the dock. I sat down beside her and stared at the water. "Yeah." "And?" I took a breath. "Before that night, I never saw you that way." She nodded. "I figured. But now I can't stop thinking about it." I turned toward her. "It's like every memory I have of you suddenly looks different." Her expression softened. "I know the feeling. I keep wondering how I missed it." "You didn't miss it," she said quietly. "I hid it." That answer somehow made it worse. "I keep replaying things," I admitted. "The soup when I was sick. The late night drives. You showing up when Ashley dumped me." She smiled faintly. Yeah, those were rough nights. Why didn't you ever say something? She looked out across the pond. Because you were happy. I didn't want to take that away from you. That sentence sat heavy between us. Finally, I said the thing that had been bothering me the most. What if we try this, and it ruins everything? Sophie turned toward me. You mean the group? Yeah. And us. Her expression was calm, honest. I've thought about that for years. And living with the what if was worse. Her hand moved slowly across the bench, until her fingers touched mine. Warm, gentle. If we try and it fails, at least we'll know. I looked at our hands, then back at her. And if it works? She smiled. That quiet Sophie smile that had always made things feel easier. Then we'll both wonder why we waited so long. My heart beat a little faster, because for the first time, I wasn't just thinking about losing my best friend. I was thinking about something else. What if Sophie had been the right person all along? And I was the only one who hadn't seen it. Something changed after that conversation in the park. Not all at once. Not like flipping a switch. It was quieter than that. Like the air between us had shifted, and suddenly everything felt just a little different. The next morning my phone buzzed at 7:12 a.m. Sophie. Just like every other morning for the past 8 years. Sophie, morning, survive your boss yet today. I stared at the message for a second before typing back. Luke, barely, haven't had coffee yet, send help. 3 dots appeared instantly. Sophie, I knew it, you're helpless before caffeine. Luke, that's rude. Sophie, that's accurate. I smiled. And for the first time since the night at the lake, the tight knot in my chest loosened a little. We didn't talk about feelings again that week. Not directly. But something had started. Small things, subtle things, little changes that would have looked normal to anyone else, except now I noticed them. Like how Sophie started sending me photos from her shoots during the day. Nothing dramatic. A sunset over a wheat field. A dog she met during a wedding shoot. Once a photo of a coffee cup with my name written on it. Luke Fuel, I texted back. Luke, you're drinking coffee without me now. That's betrayal. Sophie, relax. I bought 2. Luke, where's mine? Sophie, waiting. That word stuck with me longer than it should have. Waiting. Sophie had been doing that for years. The thought hit me randomly later that night while I was brushing my teeth. She waited. While I dated other women. While I complained about breakups. While I treated her like the safest, most permanent part of my life. And somehow she never made me feel guilty for it. Saturday came faster than expected. I was halfway through my morning coffee when my phone buzzed again. Sophie. Sophie, you busy tonight? Luke, depends. Sophie, on what? Luke, whether you're about to drag me into something dangerous. Sophie, relax, just dinner. I hesitated, then typed. Luke, dinner, 3 dots. Sophie, yeah, 3 more dots. Sophie, dinner. My heart did a weird little jump. Luke, okay. She sent a thumbs up emoji, nothing dramatic, but the rest of the day felt strange, like something important was quietly approaching. I picked her up at 7. Sophie lived in a small loft downtown above a vintage record store. The place always smelled faintly like old vinyl and coffee beans. She opened the door before I even knocked, and for a second my brain forgot how to function, because Sophie looked exactly the same, and completely different. Jeans, a simple cream sweater, hair down instead of tied back, no makeup except a little eyeliner. Just Sophie, but suddenly I noticed things I had never noticed before. The way her hair caught the light from the hallway, the nervous way she tucked a strand behind her ear. You okay? She asked. Yeah. You look like you just saw a ghost. Just realizing something. What? I've known you 8 years, I said, and somehow you still surprise me. She smiled. That's because you never pay attention. Fair. Dinner was at our usual coffee place, the one with mismatched mugs and the chalkboard menu. We had spent half our college years there. Tonight it felt different, not uncomfortable, just charged somehow. Like both of us knew this wasn't just another hangout. We sat near the window. Outside, the streetlights flickered on as evening settled over downtown. So, Sophie said, wrapping her hands around her mug, Are you nervous? About dinner with you. Yeah. Why would I be nervous? She tilted her head. Because technically this is a date. That word hit my brain a little differently. Date. Not Luke and Sophie grabbing coffee. Luke and Sophie trying something new. I leaned back in my chair. You know what's weird? What? We've done this exact thing like 100 times. And somehow this feels like the first time. Her smile softened. Yeah. The conversation slowly drifted deeper than usual. Sophie talked about photography in a way I hadn't heard before. Not just clients, dreams. I want to do a gallery someday, she said. A real one. What kind? Photos of ordinary moments. What? She stirred her coffee. People laughing in diners, kids drawing on sidewalks, couples arguing in grocery stores. That sounds oddly specific. She smiled, because those moments are real. Her eyes flickered up to mine. Those are the stories people actually live. Something about the way she said it stuck with me. What about you? She asked. What do you want? I hesitated. No one had asked me that in a long time. My job's fine, I said, but sometimes it feels like I'm just checking boxes. Save boxes. Yeah. She leaned forward slightly. You've always been the brave one in our group. That's definitely not true. You're the one who listens to everyone's problems and still pushes them forward. Her voice softened. Maybe it's time you did that for yourself. The way she said it made something warm settle in my chest. After dinner, we walked through the city. Autumn leaves scattered across the sidewalks, the air cool and crisp. At one point, Sophie reached for my hand. Not dramatic, not hesitant, just natural. Our fingers intertwined like they had always belonged there. I felt my pulse quicken, but I didn't pull away. We ended up in a small park with a fountain in the center. Water rippled quietly under the streetlights. We sat on a bench. Close. Comfortable, and for a few minutes neither of us said anything. Then Sophie broke the silence. Can I tell you something honest? Always. She looked straight ahead at the fountain. The first time I realized I loved you, I almost told you. When? Junior year. What stopped you? She smiled sadly. You were talking about a girl you liked. All right, that would do it. She nodded. I decided friendship was safer. Her eyes finally met mine, but safe isn't always better. The air between us grew very still. I looked at her, really looked at her, the girl who had been beside me through almost every major moment of my adult life, the girl who somehow knew me better than anyone else. And suddenly something clicked inside my chest, a quiet realization. Maybe the reason I had never fallen deeply for anyone else was because Sophie had always been there, before I could overthink it. I leaned forward and kissed her, soft, careful, like stepping into warm water for the first time. For a split second the world held its breath. Then Sophie kissed me back, slow, certain. When we finally pulled apart, she looked at me with a grin that felt half triumphant. Took you long enough. I laughed, yeah. She squeezed my hand, but worth the wait. And walking her back to her apartment that night, I couldn't stop thinking about one strange possibility. What if Sophie hadn't just been waiting for me to notice her? What if she had been waiting for me to finally notice us? Falling in love with Sophie didn't happen the way people describe it in movies. There wasn't a dramatic moment where everything exploded into fireworks. It was quieter than that. Almost like something that had been growing for years finally decided to stop hiding. The morning after our first kiss, my phone buzzed before my alarm even went off. 7:03 a.m. Sophie. Sophie, morning. I stared at the screen for a second, smiling like an idiot. Luke, morning. 3 dots appeared. Sophie, so. Sophie, did we really kiss last night or did I dream that? Luke, pretty sure it happened. Sophie, good. Luke, good. Sophie, because I liked it. My chest warmed in a way I couldn't explain. Luke, me too. There was a pause. Then another message popped up. Sophie, slow though, right. I knew exactly what she meant. This thing between us was new, but our friendship was 8 years old. Rushing it could break something we both cared about. Luke, slow sounds perfect. Sophie, okay. That simple agreement somehow made everything feel safer. And from that moment forward, something subtle shifted between us. Not dramatically, not loudly, just steadily. We started spending more time together, sometimes intentionally, sometimes accidentally. Lunch breaks where one of us would text the other, walks after work, late-night phone calls that stretched longer than they used to, but the biggest difference was how natural it all felt. Nothing about being close to Sophie felt forced. It felt like something that had been quietly waiting to happen. A couple weeks later, our entire friend group gathered for movie night at Mark's apartment. Pizza boxes covered the coffee table. Someone had brought cheap beer. Half the group argued over what movie to watch while the other half complained about their jobs. Normal chaos. Sophie arrived a little late. Her camera bag hung from her shoulder like always. The moment she walked in, her eyes found mine across the room, and she smiled. That small smile somehow made the whole room feel warmer. She squeezed onto the love seat beside me. "Sorry," she whispered. "Client ran late." "You bring snacks?" "Obviously." She pulled a bag of candy from her coat pocket. "Peace offering." Halfway through the movie, she leaned slightly closer. We shared a blanket. Her shoulder brushed mine. Then slowly, carefully, her hand found mine under the blanket. Our fingers intertwined. My pulse jumped instantly, but I didn't pull away. Instead, I squeezed her hand back. No one noticed. Everyone was too busy yelling at the terrible romantic comedy on the screen. But for me, that quiet moment felt louder than anything else in the room. When the movie ended, everyone started gathering their things. People drifted toward the door in small groups. Sophie and I ended up outside in the cool night air. The parking lot lights buzzed softly overhead. "That was nice," she said. "The movie." She gave me a playful look. "You know that's not what I meant." I grinned. "Yes, I know." She leaned against my car. "You still okay with the slow thing?" "Yeah." "Good." She studied my face for a moment. "You're thinking again." "I do that." "Too much?" "Probably." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint coffee scent that always followed her. "I've liked you for a long time, Luke," she said softly. "I'm okay being patient." What? The honesty in her voice hit me again. "You waited years already," I said. She shrugged lightly. "Worth it." That word stayed with me long after she drove away. Worth it. The next month passed faster than I expected. Our relationship didn't explode into something dramatic. Instead, it grew quietly, steadily. We started building small rituals together. Sunday morning coffee runs, evening walks after work, random late-night drives where Sophie played music too loud and sang completely off-key. Sometimes we talked about deep things, her fears about her photography career, my frustration with work feeling meaningless. Other times we talked about nothing at all, and somehow those moments felt just as important. One afternoon we took a short hike outside the city. Sophie kept stopping to take photos, leaves glowing in the sunlight, a crooked fence along the trail. At one point she pointed the camera at me. "Don't move." "Why?" "You look peaceful. Standing here sweating." She laughed. "Exactly." Click, the camera shutter snapped. "What's that one for?" I asked. "My future gallery." "Future gallery." She nodded. "Remember ordinary moments." She lowered the camera. "And you're in a lot of mine." The way she said it made my chest tighten again, because suddenly I realized something. My life had been full of Sophie for years, and I had never truly noticed how much that mattered. A few weeks later, the group finally caught on. It happened during trivia night at our favorite bar. We were halfway through round 3 when Sophie leaned over and kissed my cheek after I answered a question correctly. Mark froze mid-sip of his beer. "Wait a second." The entire table turned toward us. His eyes narrowed dramatically. "Are you too?" Silence fell across the table. Sophie looked at me, I looked at her, then we both started laughing. Yeah, I said, we're trying. The reaction was immediate, cheers, clapping. Someone shouted, finally. You idiots took long enough. One of the girls yelled, I blinked. You all knew. Mark rolled his eyes. Luke, you're the only one who didn't know. Sophie tried to hide her smile behind her drink. That night, driving home, I thought about something. Everyone else had seen it. Everyone else had noticed the connection between us. Except me, which made one realization slowly settle deeper in my chest. Maybe Sophie hadn't been waiting for me to fall in love with her. Maybe she had simply been waiting for me to catch up to something that had always been there. And somewhere along the way, I had, because one night a few months later, Sophie fell asleep beside me on my couch. Her head rested against my shoulder. The TV played quietly in the background, and as I looked down at her peaceful face, a thought came to me so naturally it didn't even scare me. I don't just want Sophie in my life. I want her in every version of my future. That was the moment I knew, not just that I loved her, but that I wanted something more, something permanent. And for the first time since that stupid joke on the dock, I started thinking about asking the same question again, only this time I wouldn't be joking. For weeks after that night on my couch, I carried one quiet thought everywhere with me. The same thought, over and over. You're going to marry her, not someday, not in some vague, distant future, soon. The realization didn't scare me the way it probably should have. Instead, it felt steady, like something inside me had finally settled into place. Sophie and I were driving back from a hiking trail one afternoon when she started singing loudly along with the radio, completely off-key. Completely committed, I glanced over at her and laughed. What? You're terrible. I'm passionate, she corrected, about ruining songs. What? She nudged my shoulder playfully. Rude. Then she smiled at me, that smile, the one that always made the world feel lighter. And suddenly the thought came again, you're going to marry her. That night I couldn't stop thinking about it, not the dramatic proposal scenes from movies, not a big speech, just something simple, something honest, something that felt like us. 2 days later, during my lunch break, I walked into a small jewelry shop downtown, not the fancy one with giant diamonds in the window, the quieter one, handmade pieces. Simple designs. The owner was an older woman who greeted me like she'd been expecting me, looking for something special. Yeah, I said, for someone who hates flashy things. She smiled knowingly. That usually means the person matters more than the ring. She showed me a few options, but one stood out immediately. A simple silver band, elegant, understated, exactly like Sophie. Inside the band I had something engraved, just 2 letters, L+S. Simple, permanent, perfect. I slipped the small box into my pocket and walked out of the store with my heart pounding. Now I just needed the right moment, and somehow the right moment felt obvious. Saturday morning I texted her. Luke, want to go for a drive today? Her reply came instantly. Sophie, always. Luke, surprise destination. Sophie, dangerous words. Luke, trust me. Sophie, I do. An hour later we were on the highway. Fields stretched endlessly on both sides of the road. Golden autumn light spilled across the landscape. Sophie sat in the passenger seat, sipping coffee from her thermos and adjusting the radio. Okay, she said. You're smiling suspiciously. Am I? Yes. Maybe I'm just happy. You're hiding something. Maybe. She narrowed her eyes at me. Luke. What? Where are we going? I didn't answer, I just kept driving. 30 minutes later she sat up straighter. Wait. I smiled. You recognize this road? Her eyes widened slowly. Luke. We pulled into the gravel driveway of the lakeside cabin, the same place where everything had started. The dock stretched out across the quiet water. The trees stood still in the cool autumn air. Sophie stepped out of the car slowly. You brought me back here. Yeah. She looked out at the lake. This place changed everything. I know. We walked down to the dock together. The same wooden boards creaked under our feet. The same gentle water lapped against the posts. I built a small fire pit just like the one from that night months ago. Sophie sat beside me roasting a marshmallow. You know what's funny? She said. What? The first time you asked me to marry you, you were joking. I laughed, yeah. You looked so confident too. I was drunk. She smiled, but it was the most terrifying moment of my life. Why? Because I didn't know if you were serious. The fire crackled between us. Stars slowly appeared in the sky above the lake. My heart started pounding harder. This was it. I reached into my jacket pocket. Sophie. Yeah. I turned toward her. Then I pulled the small box from my pocket. Her eyes widened instantly. Luke. I stood up, then slowly dropped down onto one knee. The same dock, the same place, but this time everything was real. I made a joke here once, I said quietly. A stupid one. She shook her head slightly. It wasn't stupid. It was careless. I opened the ring box. The silver band caught the firelight. But this time, I continued, I mean every word. Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes almost immediately. You've been my best friend for 8 years, I said. You've seen every version of me. The good ones. The bad ones. And somehow you stayed. My voice softened. You waited for me longer than anyone should have to. The lake moved quietly beneath the dock. The fire crackled. The entire world felt still. I don't want to waste another second pretending you're just my friend. I took a breath. Sophie Reynolds. I smiled. Will you marry me? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she laughed softly. And then she said the words that brought everything full circle. I've been waiting for you to ask that. But this time, her voice carried nothing but joy. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Luke. I slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. The moment it settled into place, she pulled me up and wrapped her arms around me, tight, like she never wanted to let go. We stayed like that for a long time, laughing, crying, holding each other under the quiet sky. Eventually, she pulled back slightly and looked at the ring again. You engraved it. What? Of course. Her smile grew. You know what the craziest part is? What? I spent years thinking I loved you more than you loved me. I brushed a tear from her cheek, and now. She squeezed my hand. Now I think we just needed time to arrive at the same place. We walked back toward the cabin together, hand in hand. The moon reflected across the lake behind us, and somewhere between that old joke and this quiet promise. Our story had changed forever, because sometimes love doesn't appear suddenly. Sometimes it waits patiently in the background, growing quietly, until one day you finally look up and realize it was there the whole time. And in the end, the best marriages don't start with perfect timing. They start with someone who stayed long enough for love to finally catch up.